You spent 12 years in a classroom, maybe 16, maybe more. And when you walked out, you had no idea how compound interest works, how taxes are structured to benefit the wealthy, or why debt is engineered to feel normal. That is not an accident. This is the wealth code. Today we answer the question that changes everything: who decided you would never learn this, and why? In 1971, a man named John D. Rockefeller funded the creation of a national education board in the United States. His stated mission, and this is a direct quote, was to create workers, not thinkers. The board explicitly argued against teaching children the mechanics of money, investment, or personal wealth creation. That system, designed over a century ago by the wealthiest family in American history, is still the blueprint for what your children are taught today. Let that settle in for a moment. Over 150 years later, a 2023 TIAA Institute study found that only 57% of Americans can answer basic financial literacy questions correctly. Not complex questions. Basic ones. And in the UK, a Financial Conduct Authority report found that half of all adults have less than £500 in accessible savings. This is not ignorance. This is architecture. Here is the premise, and I need you to really hear this. The education system was not designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to make you manageable, compliant, productive for someone else's wealth. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented economic history. The Industrial Revolution needed workers who showed up on time, followed instructions, and did not ask questions about ownership or profit margins. Schools were modeled, deliberately, on factories. Bells, rows, schedules, obedience. And the one subject that would have given every child real power, the mechanics of money, was left out. Not forgotten. Left out. Because a workforce that understands compound interest starts asking uncomfortable questions. A population that understands how debt instruments work stops taking predatory loans. And a citizenry that understands how wealth transfers between generations, that citizenry becomes very difficult to control. Now let us go deeper, because this is where it gets genuinely unsettling. There is a psychological phenomenon called learned helplessness. It was identified by psychologist Martin Seligman in the 1960s through a now famous series of experiments. Seligman found that when subjects were repeatedly exposed to outcomes they could not control, they eventually stopped trying, even when control became available to them. They had been conditioned to believe effort was pointless. That is exactly what financial illiteracy produces. When you grow up never understanding how money actually works, every financial setback feels random. Every debt feels inevitable. Every wealthy person feels like they were simply lucky, or born into it. You stop trying to understand the system, because no one ever told you the system could be understood. There is also research from Harvard psychologist Sean Aker that shows humans are wired to avoid complexity when they feel overwhelmed. The financial system, taxes, compound interest, asset classes, credit scoring, is presented to ordinary people as incomprehensibly complex. That presentation is intentional. When something feels too complex, the brain defaults to avoidance. And avoidance, in the domain of money, is enormously profitable for someone else. The concept is called cognitive load manipulation. And the financial services industry has mastered it. 50-page terms and conditions on a credit card. Mortgage documents that require a legal degree to parse. Insurance policies written in language that obscures more than it reveals. They are not confusing by accident. Confusion is the product. Now I want to talk about who profits from your financial ignorance, because this is the part most channels will not say clearly. The consumer credit industry generates over $170 billion annually in interest and fees, in the United States alone. That revenue depends entirely on people not understanding how interest compounds against them. Educated borrowers are unprofitable borrowers. The predatory lending industry, payday loans, rent-to-own, high-interest auto financing, targets zip codes with the lowest financial literacy rates. This is not coincidence. These businesses have done the research. They know exactly where the education system left gaps, and they built their entire business model inside those gaps. Consider this: the average payday loan carries an annual percentage rate of over 400%. 400%. And it is legal. Because the people who write the laws are the same people who fund the campaigns of the people who could change the laws, and they have no incentive to educate the customer. There is also the pension and retirement industry. Millions of people hand their retirement savings to fund managers who charge fees they do not understand, fees that, compounded over 30 years, can consume 40% of your final balance. A 2015 study by NerdWallet found that the average American loses over $155,000 in retirement savings to fees alone. If you understood this at 22, you would never hand your money over blindly. But you were never taught to ask the question. And then there is the housing market, where generations of families were told that renting is throwing money away, that buying is always better, without ever being taught how to calculate the true cost of ownership. That narrative benefits real estate agents, mortgage brokers, and banks. It does not always benefit you. This is the architecture. You were not left out of financial education by oversight. You were left out because your ignorance funds entire industries. Now, here is where we shift from diagnosis to advantage. Because understanding the system is the first step. Using that understanding is how you actually change your trajectory. The truly wealthy, and I am not talking about people who look wealthy, I am talking about people who are building generational assets, they think in a fundamentally different unit of time. Research from Thomas J. Stanley, author of The Millionaire Next Door, found that first-generation wealth builders consistently make financial decisions based on 5 to 10-year horizons, not monthly budgets. They are not asking, "Can I afford this month's payment?" They are asking, "What does this decision cost me in 5 years if I say yes, and what does it earn me in 5 years if I say no?" That is a different operating system. Wealthy people also, and this one is counterintuitive, they are comfortable with financial complexity. Not because they are smarter. Because they paid for financial education. They hired advisors. They read primary sources, not headlines. The wealthy treat financial knowledge as an asset class. They invest in understanding the rules of the game. They also understand the difference between earned income and passive income at a visceral level. Most people trade time for money. Every hour of income requires an hour of life. Wealthy people obsessively engineer income streams that work when they do not. Royalties. Dividends. Rental yields. Business systems. This is not about being lazy. It is about understanding leverage. Your time is finite. Money is not. If you only ever earn through time, you have already capped your ceiling. And perhaps most importantly, they teach their children. Wealthy families hold explicit conversations about money. They explain ownership structures, business models, tax strategy. Financial literacy is passed down as deliberately as a surname. For everyone else, money is a dinner table taboo, which means every generation starts from zero. So how do you actually change this, starting now, with what you have? First, audit your financial vocabulary. Write down every financial term that makes you uncomfortable: compound interest, asset allocation, tax-advantaged accounts, net worth versus income. Every blank is a gap that is costing you money. Then close one gap per week. Not one per year. One per week. There are free resources, Khan Academy, Investopedia, library books, that will teach you what school never did. The information is available. The decision to seek it is yours. Second, understand where your money goes before you decide where it should go. Most people cannot tell you within $100 what they spend monthly on subscriptions, on food, on interest payments. You cannot optimize what you cannot see. Spend 2 hours this week building a complete picture of your actual financial reality. Not what you think it is. What it is. Third, reframe debt. Every piece of consumer debt you carry is a monthly payment to someone else's passive income stream. That is not dramatic language, that is accounting. When you pay interest, you are funding someone else's wealth code. Every debt you eliminate is a redirection of that cash flow back to yourself. Prioritize accordingly. Fourth, change your information environment. The average person consumes financial content that is designed to sell them products, not educate them. Start deliberately seeking primary sources. Annual reports. Central bank data. Books written by researchers, not influencers. Your information diet determines your financial worldview. And your worldview determines every decision you make. Your financial ignorance was not your fault, but your financial education is now entirely your responsibility. The system was built before you arrived. You did not design it. You were handed it, and told it was normal. But now you know it was a design choice made by people who were not thinking about your future. That changes things. The Wealth Code publishes a new video every single day, because rewiring a lifetime of financial conditioning takes more than one conversation. If this shifted something for you, subscribe, because tomorrow we go even deeper. And if you want to keep pulling this thread, watch our video on why the middle class is a psychological trap, not an economic reality. The answers are going to surprise you.